I'd like to talk to you. That'd help, wouldn't it, on a podcast episode? I'd like to talk to you about something. And
is it Guinness?
I would like your interesting. Let's see if Guinness come up. I'd like your take on it from. I'd like your marketing hat on, and I'd like your dad hat on.
Two hats that never get worn at the same time, really.
So the question that I want us to talk about and explore on today's episode: should brands market to people who technically can't buy from you, specifically kids? So when we say can't buy from you, I think we're talking, just generally speaking, purchasing power and authority and income. So I started a bit of a discussion on this on LinkedIn. So I'm going to start by using some of these stats that I shared the other day, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So, all about marketing to kids. So some stats which I thought were pretty eye-opening. 1 in 3 kids influences household level buying. 37% of parents say that their kids influenced the next car purchase, and 78% say kids forced a new car purchase. Another stat, half of parents include kids in decisions on which streaming services to use in the house. And final one, most kids start ordering their own meals in restaurants around age 5. And because of that, more than 75% of parents would change the restaurant choice depending on how much their kid likes a brand or a menu item before they go. So I'm not a dad, you are. What do you think about that, generally speaking? I want a marketer's take and a dad's take.
To reword a famous line from Beyonce.
She's been mentioned already.
Who runs the world? It's not girls. It's kids.
Well, yeah, depends what age. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. If I were Guinness, wrong conversation. I wouldn't be marketing to kids for obvious reasons. But that being said, kids are huge influencers on every decision once they reach a certain point and they've got their own minds. Like I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. Mm-hmm. So I have one with a very strong mind and one with a mind that is getting stronger each day in terms of decision making. But cars, totally.
Yeah.
Different requirements. Not that they would then have like a say on, they don't have the awareness to have a say, but in terms of like what you need.
Yeah.
Changes your opinion. Like I'd love to have a little tiny car just to potter about in, but you can't do that because you need to get car seats in and prams, and if you've got a dog, it's a different kettle of fish, but it definitely influences that. Streaming services, yeah, totally. I've got more streaming services than I would have if I was without children.
Yeah,
definitely, and they cater to different audiences. Obviously, Disney, I would say, probably comes top of the list. Yeah. Netflix does a good job, but don't have the, like, I would say Disney kids, Netflix adults, but then Netflix has got kids that's like bolted on. Whereas if I was going to watch something on a streaming service, Disney wouldn't be my first stop.
Yeah, Disney's a good brand to talk about because you might be tempted to just think of it as a child-facing or child-targeting brand, but it's not.
Yeah, it's really not. But if you think about where Disney are very clever, Marvel, for example, into the adult audience with product placements in movies and stuff like that. So
Star Wars, didn't they take on Star Wars as well? Well, that's only really going to be a strong cohort of the older audience.
Yep, but they're speaking to people from the age of 4 right through to the age of 90.
Yeah.
So in terms of like scope and attention, huge.
Yeah. What do you think of this thing of brands getting in front of kids, younger generation, sort of purchasing power themselves, but, you know, being into, like you talk about car seats and things, certainly being considered in purchasing decisions in the household or whatever. What do you think about brands who are leaning on it from it's a legitimate thing to start building long-term loyalty for the future? What do you think about that? Is that something that you see both from either from a marketing and or dad perspective as well?
I think it's absolutely essential. I think especially if you're in like a product-based business where, let's take like consumer electronics. Someone at 15 that hasn't quite arrived at the point where they've got full autonomy over the purchasing yet is spending all the time online is going to be influenced by brands, and in 10 years when they fall into your demographic and they have got the purchasing autonomy, there's the opportunity there for that cycle to go full circle and to create like loyal purchasers, loyal customers.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to me, like for that to be a strategy.
Like formative years, just from a general life perspective, you can certainly see the benefit of having your brand. You know, we talk about brand and attention and influence, but my God, it must be powerful in those, as I said, the formative years, to try and establish yourself as that brand of choice for whatever it is. Like you said, product-based businesses in particular, they're sort of more attainable ones to think about. But I'm sure you can widen it to beyond just product only. There's probably, B2B. There's probably, sounds maybe a bit sort of vanilla, but like insurance policies are going to be influenced by younger demographics and younger generations in the same way you mentioned a car needing the consideration of space for, I don't know, luggage and car seats. Well, insurance would have to work in the same way that you're insuring more people, for example. So it is interesting from a loyalty perspective. I might take you a little while to think of any of these, so I don't want to properly put you on the spot. So if there aren't any examples, let's just talk about it. But as a dad, have you got any like experiences of your kids almost being targeted by brands? Like how do you sort of feel about that? If you've either got specific examples or generally, like, is that something that, and you're in a bit of a interesting place being a marketer as well, that do you try and would you try and protect them from it? Do you see it as a positive? Do you see the obvious, there are negatives to these things and having to be careful, but like what's your general take on it from a dad perspective? But a marketing dad perspective could be quite unique.
There are brands that do it well and there are brands that don't, and there are like TV advertising, for example, is a bit mental, especially in the like toy space.
Yeah.
Like the saturation of placement in the relevant places like morning TV or whenever a kid would be watching a channel, for example, like the saturation is ridiculous. Like if you watch Milkshake on Channel 5 at 7, the adverts in between is literally all aimed at the children.
Do you see that, just quickly, from a seasonality perspective, do you see that ramp up right now going into...
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Which, that's just a common sense-led decision. It doesn't build influence in the way that we're discussing. One of the best examples that I can think of, which is probably, I mean, take from it what you will, but Apple. My son is 2.5 and thinks all tablets are called iPads.
Wow, yeah.
And I have never really taught him any which way. I have my eldest, who's 5 in a couple of weeks. I've taught her the difference between a tablet and an iPad.
That's interesting, yeah.
Because, well, I don't know why.
I was going to say, do you know why you've done that?
So she initially began calling all tablets iPads in the same way that my son did.
Yeah.
Then we got her a Fire tablet,
Right.
which are great.
Yeah.
Like the parental controls.
Is that Amazon?
That's Amazon's own. Parental controls are great. Like the learning capabilities are great. My decision is based on the fact that I want her to be tech savvy. I don't want her to be in a situation where she's presented with being able to use tech in school, for example, and she struggles to adapt.
Yeah.
I know that kids adapt quick, but that's me just trying to be a bit forward thinking. So we made that call, and when she got that, she'd had visibility of an iPad, my iPad, which is probably where she picked up that association, but I've made the effort to differentiate. But in the same way, you've got a 14, 15-year-old wanting a smartphone, they will want an iPhone. They won't say to mum, can I have an Android phone?
Yeah.
They will say, can I have an iPhone?
Yeah.
And that in itself is the absolute epitome of the power of brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, people dismiss Apple's depth when it comes to stuff like that, and like they've just done the announcement with all the new iPhones and stuff, and people are saying like tech wise they're behind, AI wise they're behind. Doesn't matter. They'll get up to speed. They don't have to be the first in the game. They have to be the best, and in terms of branding and marketing, they're pretty up there. So when it comes to time for them then dominating a space, they'll get in there.
Yeah. What are your have you had any experiences of dad caution that might link to certain brands? Or I know you were very specifically talking about like the parental controls on the Fire tablet, but more from a advertising marketing perspective. Obviously, it sounds like you've already referenced how relentless that toy the
toy
toys,
space is,
yeah, which I guess is one thing. It's interesting when you think of like stepping aside but related, you know, the HFSS rules in food and drink. A big part of that is obviously from a health perspective, but also protection of children perspective, which is only a positive and a good thing. But, you know, are you, as a dad, are you tuned into maybe some of the advertising or marketing that comes your way that you might see as being directly targeting kids or your kids? Are you sort of, yeah?
I have a big problem with food.
So HFSS, you're definitely pro.
Yeah.
From a principle perspective.
Yeah. The premise of it makes a lot of sense, but the way that food is presented as well as marketed, I have a problem with.
You mean like visually?
Yeah, I mean,
Quite
like
literally.
the nutritional value of food is important, and I can almost immediately tell, like if my kids have had too much sugar,
Right, yeah.
for example,
Yeah.
and the way that food is even subliminally marketed to kids when you're rolling down the supermarket and stuff like that, that the brands that are on the shelves know exactly what they're doing, and then even down to the flavour profile of foods that are bad for you. A packet of crisps, for example, is constructed in such a way which is so satiating that it makes you want to go back, and that's chemical, and that's something that I've become, like, I've always been into nutrition and health and for as long as I can remember, but it's different when it's your kids.
Yeah.
And the tactics that are put in place with certain products, like the branding is obviously developed in a specific way.
Yeah.
And then once they've had that product, like a pack of Haribo, for example, the effect that has is something that they want to go back to.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because it's so mainstream and widespread in the West that it's difficult to police because it's hard to explain and hard for a child to comprehend what that's doing.
Do you feel like you're in a... Do you see it as being in you could be in a bit of an interesting position, having been a marketer for as long as you have, that you're almost seeing it? Like, do you ever speak to any other parents, or do you imagine you're in circles with other non-marketer parents, and they might see or take, say, a piece of advertisement, piece of marketing differently to you because of your vocation, because of what you do?
Yeah, I've been in conversations where that's
apparent,
and it's like, but yeah, I don't know. A lot of parents are pretty savvy with that kind of stuff. If you involve kids in almost anything, parents are paying attention, either actively or subliminally.
Which, I mean, the subliminally thing is interesting anyway, because there's overt and then there's, as we're saying, a little bit more covert, and the psychology that goes in, there's the brand development that goes into some of this would be enormous. I mean, we've talked about Disney already, like the layers to it, and just from an age demographics perspective, are there any corners of life that they're not across?
No.
Which, I mean, the intricacy of that, but when it's effective as well, it is amazing. That they've become the brand with the touch points that they have, online, offline, experiential. Is the effectiveness of that is amazing.
I would not be surprised, and I can't confirm this in any way, shape or form, unless someone at Disney wants to come forward and have a conversation, because I'd be really curious about that. But I suspect that as soon as a 0 to 1 child is kicking around, it's already in play, and that will probably likely be starting with the parents at that point.
Yeah.
Whereby there'll be brand messaging, there'll be targeting going on, which nurtures or softens the mindset of those parents to certain products, to certain things, and at the right time that will then start to encourage kids at a certain age, and then that messaging will be family, and the targeting and the work that goes into it will probably be something that passes a lot of people by. But I have no doubt that Disney are on top of starting at that point.
Their brand by audience cohort targeting sort of map would be amazing to look at.
It'd be crazy, and the data that they carry would be unreal.
And seeing that the loyalty score through not just generations, but an individual, them through their generations, through their life, and almost like a brand health score would be amazing data to look at. Related to Disney, we've talked about it, streaming services you mentioned in your household, obviously backing up those stats that I mentioned at the start. When Netflix, etc., announced the advertising model that they were going to, do you remember that last couple of years? Is there a consideration there as a dad? So in other words, streaming services are prominent in the household. Kids dictate or influence the decision on those streaming services, rightly so. You've explained in your experience why. And we've talked about like TV advertising, above the line advertising, toys at those prime times of kids' screen time. Did you have a thought? Do your kids come to mind when Netflix announced, that they were rolling out ads in things, for example? Is that another touch point that you have to be just alert to as a dad? Or do you see it as just the marketing point of view?
Both really. Yeah, I mean
Do the kids get advertised to on? I don't have Disney, so do they get advertised to?
so Amazon's the worst.
Okay,
Amazon do ads if you pay or not. No.
great.
Yep, super. Netflix and Disney are slightly better if you pay,
Yeah,
but even then, there's always pathways
yeah,
in what the show structure of the layout when content's being selected, the things that are presented when content is finished. There's multiple touch points that are thought through.
yeah,
And look, ultimately these streaming services want eyeballs for as long as they possibly can.
yeah,
So whether it's product led or attention led, there's definitely pathways in both. Which I mean the content suggestions and that kind of algorithmic stuff doesn't really bother me that much,
okay,
because ultimately I have control over
yeah,
when that starts and finishes.
yeah,
So that side of it's not too much of a concern.
It is. It's this vulnerable thinking though, and it vulnerable groups. I'm thinking about those, and it does. I don't know. It sort of makes me, as I said, on this episode, I'm not a dad, so I'm not coming at it from a dad experience perspective. But my sort of, in theory, and what I imagine is, obviously you want to protect your kids at any and all costs, and I don't know, is marketing seen as an evil sometimes, and talked about as a bit of an evil? Advertising in particular, not just marketing, but advertising. Is it a sort of necessary evil? Is it an evil because you're talking? It's the age old thing of like when you talk about vulnerable groups and you talk about the old person down the road getting targeted on the doorstep by someone they can't say no to. Kids, they're another vulnerable group, aren't they? So like, where's the line and what's the line? And as an agency owner and a dad, do you ever see those two worlds colliding? I.e., in theory, I'm not saying that you've come across this, but in theory, if a brand knocked on your door and you were uncomfortable with it from a, say, audience targeting perspective, your duty, both as a marketer but also as a dad, would see you, I'm presuming, say no or challenge, anything that you're uncomfortable with from a children targeting perspective.
I think it changes with the age of the child.
Yeah.
I think when they're in a position where they're consuming content autonomously or fairly autonomously, you can put safeguards in place, but you can't ultimately fully control what they see. And I think early teen is a area of the internet that I'm scared of,
like wary of, yeah,
from my perspective, because kids are impressionable, especially at that point in time, and the content that is circulating socially, ethically,
politically,
economically, there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that is quite terrifying at that age, I think.
Do you think TikTok's helped? And when I say helped, I'll use a different word. Do you think TikTok has compounded this?
Definitely. I think it's
Because it's coming in hot water several times, hasn't it, in the media? We've heard that all the stories, rightly so, but it's just another very popular. I imagine those years that you talk about, the early teens, I dread to think what screen time looks like since the advent of TikTok.
Well, there's several strands to that, and there's the algorithms are designed to keep people on platform, but also there's the fact that it's largely user generated, and the opinions and views of the 19-year-old being imposed on a 13-year-old. It's a very tricky place, and I think it's not. I think it's I don't think it's regulated enough. I don't think we're doing enough to protect that generation of, or that demographic of kids.
As a brand, then, where would you, if you were running and operating a brand, and there's quite an obvious, say, opportunity to influence children of whatever age, are you, as a brand leader there, from a decision making perspective, are you in a tricky position, would you say, nowadays, with all the touch points that are now possible? We've mentioned TikTok 5-10 years ago. We weren't talking about TikTok. Have they got a harder job now, or is it just more of a more widespread consideration?
I think
to make decisions, really.
If you're looking at a brand in isolation, in terms of that decision, it's quite clear to act morally if that's your demographic, and ethically, and be socially aware of the impact. I think perhaps where it falls down for me is the platform.
Okay, yeah.
Because commercial incentive for a brand will drive unethical practice, but a platform has the capability to not allow the brand that capability. Whereas the brand will continue to make those decisions because of the commercial incentive. But if the platform doesn't allow for that to happen, the brand will be forced to change the practice.
Yeah.
That's where it falls down for me.
Based on that, if you were starting up a business today, and again you saw an opportunity to be outwardly targeting the younger generations, does anything like that you've just talked through, would it do you think scare you off, put you off from pursuing that? So almost knowing, actively targeting younger generation, just because of the considerations that we've talked through.
I mean, it depends what the
nature of the business
is and what you're trying to achieve. I mean, I don't see issue with it if it is moral, and socially correct. I don't see an issue with that, and I don't think, like I said at the start, like building brand equity young, or with a young generation, and then carrying it through is a long-term view, and I back a long-term view for a marketing strategy. But I think there are few, in today's climate, there are few brands that think in 50-year cycles. There are brands that think in 15-month cycles. And that's what I'm referencing when I say the commercial pressure of doing something that is perhaps unethical and void of social responsibility is where it falls down. Whereas brands that think in long term will make better choices. And I think, like I said at the start, it's a smart move. But where it falls down and where it needs policing is the platforms. Meta, TikTok, Snapchat. These platforms need to make sure that they're investing in just completely stopping brands having the capability of even delivering that content to that demographic. And the thing that worries me slightly is the technology is advancing at a rate of knots. So the capability to scale it, get shut down, pivot, scale it, get shut down, pivot, it's almost going to become autonomous, which, how do you police that? It's like, use AI to fight AI.
Yeah, it's quite overwhelming.
But the only people that have got the capability of like really knuckling under and doing something about it and protecting the younger generation now are the big platforms and the people who own the attention.
Don't want to go political, but government as well.
100%.
Yeah, alongside some of those platforms that you mentioned. So, heading towards the end of the conversation, but I'm wanting to ask you why a brand who might have a legitimate opportunity to start thinking about the younger generation and trying to influence them, or at least get in front of them, why some brands might neglect that. Is it a combination? Could it be as simple as what you've just said there, a bit more of a short-term mindset? Could it be, and it might be all of these, could it be budget restraints as well? Could it also be pure sort of laziness, no vision as well? So it's not just a commercial pressure to think a little bit more short-term and not that long-term piece, but ultimately the wrong type of vision, or the people too sort of restricted in their vision. And also serious consideration, do people just think, well, don't want to touch that because of the nervousness or whatever that we've talked through? Do you think brands are in those places and not touching a legitimate opportunity because of either laziness, budget, short-term mindset, and ultimately afraid or scared to touch what could be taboo?
I think it's ignorance to the outcome.
Even though you've got a Disney who everyone knows staring you in the face their success, do you reckon?
Yeah, if you're talking on the negative side of the coin, like if you want to really like dive into it, look at what's just happened to porn in the UK. I don't know about outside the UK. They've just shut it down. It's age verified. Obviously, it's not bulletproof.
Yeah.
By any stretch of the imagination, but it's been put in place as a reaction
steps
to
taken, yeah,
what is an unprecedented loneliness and suicide epidemic, certainly in young men. It's like I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but there's a real issue at the moment with 13 to 21-year-old men not being able to form meaningful relationships, becoming addicted to porn, it leading to mental health problems or suicide. And that in itself, as an example, a dark example of what we've been highlighting, is where I'm concerned. Like the social responsibility and the ignorance to it is where the problem is.
Yeah.
And similarly, pulling it back, it's like Meta. Let's use Meta. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but as a platform, they've got a huge amount of reach, eyeballs from the age of 13 upwards. Their one mission, regardless, is shareholder value. That's what they're there to do.
Yeah.
The decisions that are made, whether it's PR'd or not, are made to increase shareholder value. So the corporate responsibility and the commercial incentive outweighs the ethical and social responsibility side, which is where it falls down. And I don't know what the answer is with that. And I don't know what it gets really complicated when you look at the economic value that business drives for, like the US economy, for example. The government are in a position where they can regulate it, but how far do they regulate it to the point where it's going to affect the performance of that business and decrease shareholder value? That might potentially then start affecting the economy. And the economy is the backbone of the country. Like, it's not a easy problem to solve.
No. And I think that's reflected in step change. Whenever there is change, it's step change. It's not like wholesale, obviously, because it is an overwhelmingly big, but overwhelmingly impactful thing that we're talking about here.
Well, I mean, it's greed ultimately.
Yeah.
And I think the abundance suggests to me that everybody can win whilst maintaining safety. But there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm no one to comment on it.
And we navigate as marketers, we navigate a lot of this. So, it's not that we're shying away from it, because the platforms are there and we're plugged into those platforms. So we're a tiny, 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 tiny bit of that ecosystem, but doing it in the right way, ethics, morally, all those kind of things. But you're at the mercy of these people and platforms, as we've said. Just before we wrap up, I want to maybe go on a slightly more positive note, but ask you the question from a brand perspective. And I think I know the answer, but I think it'd be a good takeaway. What do you think the biggest risk to a brand would be for neglecting right now a younger, legitimate opportunity, targeting or getting in front of younger audiences?
The efficacy of doing marketing well is building on emotional response in a positive way, which embeds a brand within someone's psychology to the point where the recall, when that person has the mental availability, is autonomous. That takes a long, long time. McDonald's. I could show you a picture of a red and yellow square with nothing else on it, and you'd instantly go, McDonald's.
Yeah.
That is marketing and brand. McDonald's are a good example to sum up the conversation, based on Happy Meals right through to the, 80-year-old that still goes.
Yeah.
That is marketing.
Yeah.
And same way that Disney are doing it. Apple are doing it without even really...
Yeah.
By becoming category leaders in certain products and building brand to the point where it's an ownership of, like, iPhone becomes the term. That's proper marketing, proper brand.
Yeah.
But everybody's different, and everybody has different budgets, everybody has different capabilities. But everybody can also think about it in the right way.
I like that. Another one that we haven't got time to speak about, Lego. It's an interesting one.
Lego were in a bit of trouble, though. They turned it right around, I think, mid sort of 90s.
Yeah. But they've got advocates there, mental advocate, like, in a positive way, obviously. Brand advocates, deep advocacy throughout generations as well.
I think Lego really knuckled under with the marketing, and also did a fucking great job of tapping into culture by doing brand collabs.
Yeah, the collabs are, and then think of the movies that they brought out as well. Not that I've seen any of them, but anyway, need to wrap up. Quick fire round. It's in front of me, so I'm going to say it. YouTube or TikTok?
For the purposes of building brand, I would probably say YouTube, because it gives you the opportunity to do more depth.
I'm going to ask you this, and I don't know what it is. Is Roblox a marketing channel?
Definitely, for the right demographic.
I don't know what that is.
It's like Minecraft.
All right, okay. We talked about kids being an obvious consideration in car purchase, for example. But should the car, this is a little bit more specific, should car brands target kids? So you're saying from a decision perspective they are considered for obvious reasons, the kids, but should the car brand target kids? So it's not a consideration by the parents at this point, it is literally a...
Do you know what? I'd like to meet a car brand brave enough to test that. Because it'll take a long time to get to a point where you're confident on whether it has or hasn't worked. There's a potential for it not to work, which could result in quite a significant loss of investment. However, if you think about it, and you think about parent in market to buy a car, looking at the market, looking at decisions, time poor, then in between a milkshake, like I said on Channel 5, there's a ad by BMW which shows 2 5-year-olds having the time of their life, and then, I don't know, a feature which appeals to kids, like a built-in screen that shows Peppa Pig, and it resonates with that 5-year-old, and that 5-year-old draws the parent's attention to it. That has every potential to sway that parent's decision.
Car brands, send us your brief.
But it needs doing in the right way. I think it's... Parents know at any one time there will be a hit thing that the kid is totally all in on. A Peppa Pig. I'm trying to think what else there is that's Bluey. Fucking great. Love Bluey. So if I were a BMW, would I approach Bluey as a franchise and say, we've got a new iX3 coming out. It's got the top of the range, which is what they all show on the marketing collateral, has got built-in screens in the back. We want to put Bluey on the screens in the advert, and we also want to give away a Bluey character with every purchase. We're going to run this campaign, see what it does. Do I think that would work? 100%.
Thank you.